Home is supposed to be the one place in the world you feel the safest, sheltered from the evils of the world and free to rest up until the next time you have to leave it. So what happens when someone invades that sanctuary? Maybe they want money, revenge, or something worse, but all you know is they're depraved and desperate. Would you reach for the RPG next to your couch and blow them away? Leap from a window and run somewhere safe? Fight to disarm your opposition? Or do your best to hide and call the cops? I'm sure some of you have concrete plans set in place for any type of emergency, but I mostly only think about these things when I'm feeling paranoid. I don't find myself thinking about home security all that much at all unless I happen to have some sativa by accident that day.
Don't smoke all our weed.
I won't. I promise.
And even then, I mostly just peek out the blinds and check the deadbolt a few times. Some might choose to build up their defenses at home, arming themselves to the teeth in case some no-good raider stops by to check up on them. Regardless of your level of preparation, there are really only a few ways for this scenario to play out, and luckily we have a wealth of films exploring the topic of home invasions to let us know exactly what to expect. The idea of your home being taken over by villainous characters is nothing new in cinema, and seemingly dates all the way back to 1909 with the silent film The Lonely Villa, which depicts a small home being broken into during an attempted burglary shortly after the husband leaves for the day. Luckily, the hoodlums don't remember to cut the phone line until after the wife is able to place a distressed call, and the police come to save the day just as the interior room the family is hiding in is breached. Clearly, the fear around criminals breaking into your domicile goes back as far as movie making itself, and we've seen no shortage of media covering the idea. One of my favorites came in 1955 with the release of The Desperate Hours, a crime noir movie which this time shows three desperate prison escapees invading a suburban household for multiple days. The trio is led by Humphrey Bogart in what would end up being the final movie that was broadcast to the public while he was still alive. After stealing a guard's weapon and cruising a few neighborhoods, the crooks see a bike outside and know this is a family with something to lose, so they take over almost immediately and demand a safe hideout until their cash gets dropped off by an accomplice. Initially, the plan is to not hurt anyone and leave the home around midnight, but as that time approaches, the cash never shows up and they decide to have it mailed instead. Mailing the cash means it will take a couple of days, so the crooks explain to the hostages that they need to live their lives as normal in the meantime. They make demands and boss the family around until they reach their breaking point and start forming plans against them. Tensions run high throughout the movie as the father struggles with whether he should attempt to fight back, get help, or just comply with the criminals' demands so as not to get his family hurt. Eventually, the police are notified, and even though they're white suburbanites, the dad of the family is worried that the police will mishandle the job and get his family killed either by the criminals or by themselves. Everything culminates in a grand plan where the dad brings an empty gun into the house and tricks the lead crook into using it in his final hostage standoff. The family gets away safe but traumatized, and only the garbage man is wrongfully killed. The movie was well received and went on to inspire a couple remakes. I think it largely defined what circumstances a home invasion flick could thrive under as well. Everyone seemed to understand that it worked because it was realistic. If Bogart came in and killed everyone, we'd have no movie at all, and the same could be said if the police saved the day right away like they did in The Lonely Villa. Neither would make for a very fun story to watch. However, The Desperate Hours really pulls off the premise that it does lay out. It's one of the few movies of the genre that has enough breadth to run to feature length. I was engaged and curious the entire time, and clearly some aspiring writers took inspiration from the simple plot because a wave of home invasion movies followed it. Another one I quite enjoyed was Wait Until Dark, which centers on Audrey Hepburn as a blind woman being manipulated and interrogated by a band of robbers after a drug-filled doll is intercepted by her federal agent husband. It's a little slower to reveal its hand than The Desperate Hours, but it does have a similar basis. This one is sometimes attributed as the origin of the word jump scare due to this frightening scene. In 1977, Death Game showed us what happened when the desperate criminals are traded out for a pair of not-so-vulnerable young women. After allowing two damsels in distress to enter his home, a man is coerced into being intimate with them and then held captive in his own living quarters while they act like generally uncivilized children and torment him along the way. They convince him they're underage and that he'll be ousted as a pervert if he calls the cops, so he deals with their shenanigans until he reaches a breaking point and everyone agrees to part ways. The girls are mysteriously in his home again when he gets back though, and eventually they physically incapacitate him. They tell him they're going to execute him at dawn, leaving him to grapple with what he's done and what his life has become. Instead, they leave the man alive to deal with the repercussions of his actions, with his family due home soon. So this one marks a decided turn in the focus of home invasion movies, no longer serving as a public service announcement about criminals on the loose, and instead shifting the narrative to show us that no one is safe in their own homes, and you never know who you might be letting in. It also made the audience question who was the real victim in this scenario and the morality of everyone involved. In 1994, Pulp Fiction hit theaters, and Austrian director Michael Haneke was one of the lucky people who bought a ticket. He didn't care for the movie, and one scene in particular really rubbed him the wrong way: Marvin's death scene. Marvin's life is supposed to be spared, and yet it's taken from him in an instant, and the killing is attributed to something as petty as a bump in the road. Not only is his death meaningless, but the stressful moment got a real-life laugh from the audience during Haneke's viewing. As Michael struggled to figure out why gratuitous violence somehow related to humor in America, he used his internal debate as inspiration in writing his 1997 feature film, Funny Games. Funny Games is a sometimes realistic, sometimes meta, sometimes humorous, and sometimes torturous movie that shows an Austrian family arriving at their vacation property for an extended stay and being greeted by two seemingly friendly young fellows who claim to be extended family members of the neighbors from next door. These two quickly overstay their welcome after receiving and breaking a few borrowed eggs, and things escalate when they insult the patriarch of the family and he smacks one of them. Dad turns his back and is struck by a golf club to the knee, and the family is corralled into the living room to be held captive by these two sycophants. At one point, another neighbor from across the lake stops by, but the family is forced to play it off and continue being held hostage. The young boy escapes and flees next door, only to find that they were the previous victims of the deranged man currently chasing him. He finds a gun mounted on the wall, but when he tries to fire, he realizes that it's empty and he's dragged back to the home with the rest of the family. They decide to kill the boy before saying goodbye to the parents, and we're left with an extremely long, silent scene where both mom and dad are in complete and utter shock, unable to process the madness that has unfolded throughout the day. Mom runs to get help, but she emerges from the bushes at the wrong time and is immediately captured again. They kill Dad and throw Mom in the lake before moving on to the home of the neighbors we met earlier, perhaps perpetuating a cycle of violence from one vacation retreat to the next. This is the first home invasion movie that had an impact on me and made me question whether things like this really happen. Do people really go around breaking into homes and hurting others with no motive whatsoever? I sure hope not, and the real-world evidence says usually not. The overarching themes of the movie include manners, ethics, and violence in the media, much like Haneke's previous movies, and while sometimes it can feel like he is lecturing you through the work, I still enjoy his contribution for staying quite grounded, if nothing else. The two Austrian actors playing the villains are truly menacing as polite yet violent young boys teaching the world a lesson. It does serve as a conversation piece on how we receive violence in film. Are we meant to treat it with the same gravity as real-world violence, or just laugh it off like Marvin's accidental death in Pulp Fiction? Personally, I think it's kind of up to the director. Obviously, if you give us multiple minutes of silence and a still camera shot after a gruesome death, we're going to view it as heavy and sad, whereas with Pulp Fiction, they immediately start riffing about why it happened and how to fix it, taking the attention off of the untimely slain. While Haneke's movie had a few surreal moments, it mostly stayed based in reality, with characters reacting to the increasingly volatile situation as many people of the time probably would. The 2000s would bring with it another major shift in the genre, this time moving entirely away from the slow burn drama element and heading towards pure fear-based thrillers with just a dash of gore for the next decade or so. 2002's Panic Room is about a panic room, if you can believe it. A mother and daughter trap themselves inside when 3 burglars break into their home. The burglars soon realize that the valuable bonds they're after are in the panic room as well, and they wage war to get inside. Eventually, the mom gets the upper hand and the cops save the day. There are a few emotional moments, but everything mostly airs on the unrealistic side of things. It doesn't add much to the genre or even present a unique perspective on it. Now, 2006's Them, or Ils, is the first movie in the video to claim to be based on true events. However, no evidence of the alleged real-life crimes have ever been uncovered, leading most to believe it is instead based on an urban legend. Whether it really happened or not, Them depicts another Austrian couple being terrorized in their home, this time by masked individuals who are scarcely seen but immediately violent. The first 3/4 are totally grounded, and the couple scurry about the sprawling home from room to room while trying to get help, form a plan, and stay alive. Eventually, they escape into the tree line, but the husband is too injured to climb a fence, so they separate and the wife makes it as far as the car before being captured. Her hubby takes a different route and finds one of the masked madmen meandering around her vehicle. Some bludgeoning happens, and we kind of see it as a triumph before it's revealed to us that the perpetrator was actually a child the whole time, leaving us to question just what the hell these kids are up to. Hubby makes his way into the nearby underground tunnels and rescues wifey from several more curious kiddos. One of the kids seems to be on their side, telling the others to stop hurting the wife and leading them to an escape route afterwards, but he turns out to be another little troublemaker in the end. The husband gets taken down and the wife finds daylight, but it turns out she is trapped behind a sewer grate and she gets dragged back into hell. Some end credits are displayed that claim the kids were caught and stated that they did it because the couple didn't want to play with them. A truly chilling line had it been even remotely based in reality like they claimed that it had. 2008 brought with it a US remake of Funny Games with a couple of American stars and absolutely no changes to the story whatsoever. It's a little baffling to me why he'd bother to remake a statement piece shot for shot after only 10 years, but hey, I guess that's Hollywood, right? The husband is pretty insufferable and the villains aren't quite as menacing, but overall you do just fine watching either version as they are truly the same story. A little later that same year, we got a brand new entry into the home invasion cinema world. Sort of. The Strangers is an American thriller that, much like Them, claims to be based on true events, but provides no evidence of any similar events transpiring. And, much like Them, depicts a group of masked individuals terrorizing a couple while visiting their vacation home. This time around, the tension starts building when a young girl knocks on the door late at night and asks, "Is Tamara home?" and runs away when she's told that she's not. Eventually, several more creepy people show up, now donning masks and shining their headlights before gaining entry to the home and chasing the couple violently, but also somehow playfully. The tension boils over when the Golden God himself shows up, playing the main character's best friend and best man, only to be mistakenly shot and killed by the groom himself, who thought he was finally gaining an upper hand over his captors. This is the moment that stuck with me after watching this film all those years ago, and even though we just met Dennis, or whatever his name is, the emotional weight is still heavy. I mean, our protagonist just unalived his best friend in the world. Our traumatized couple emerge from hiding to see killer scrawled on the mirror and decide to run for both their own killers and the scene of the crime. They really run the gamut of tropes, between nearly escaping, nearly killing the killers, and nearly reaching the outside world before eventually both being captured and knocked unconscious. They awaken to the full crew standing in front of them while they're bound to chairs, immediately asking why they're doing this. One of the girls offers yet another motiveless and bone-chilling response: "Because you were home." The gang eventually take their masks off, which anyone in a situation involving serious criminals knows is a bad sign. They stab the groom while the bride watches, and it's implied that they attack her as well. Two young boys stumble onto the crime scene while delivering church literature, and the bride wakes up screaming. It's really hard to watch The Strangers and not compare it to them, but the creators will claim until their deathbeds that the two are entirely unrelated. When the movie was first announced, some people even thought it was literally an American remake of them, but I digress. The writers called its genre true terror, and while I can agree that it has its scary moments, some of the weight is relieved by the concept itself. The Strangers did surprisingly well in theaters and brought with it a slew of new home invasion media that would cling on to their psychological thriller roots while also dipping their toes into the horror subgenre, seemingly starting with 2010's Spanish film Kidnapped. I know the title might seem slightly counterintuitive seeing as this is a home invasion movie, but I guess there are technically some elements of kidnapping as well. Either way, Kidnap throws us right into the action with a hooded and bloodied man waking up and seeking help, demanding a phone to call and warn his home of danger, where his daughter tells him, "They made it inside, they shot Mom." That's all we ever learn about these first victims, but it serves as a sizzling intro to hook us right in. The rest of the movie follows the same formula as most of the others here, with an added element of immersive realism. A group of masked criminals break into a home while the family is in. This time the motive is made clear immediately in that the crooks start demanding phones and money right away. They decide they want more, which leads to a large section where the dad is separated from the rest of the family to withdraw as much money as he can from the ATM, and seeing him mentally cycle through all of his available options to rescue his family reminded me a lot of The Desperate Hours, while seeing the mom and daughter feud with the rest of the criminals back at home reminded me of The Strangers. This one is easily the most tense of the bunch, and they do a great job at simulating the desperation one might feel while being attacked. Every scene leaves you questioning who's going to come out on top. There are several small victories throughout the film, however, in the end, the entire family is ended at the hands of the lead lunatic. This is easily a top contender and possibly one of my favorite entries on the entire list. It borrows some concepts from each of the iterations of this genre and improves on a few as well. It seamlessly blends every enjoyable element exposed in the genre, melting together the thriller and horror parts into one suspenseful soup. The 2010s brought yet another decided shift in home invasion media, from tense thrillers to surreal horror. And while horror has never been my favorite genre, I still have a few choice selections to discuss. Needless to say, shit's about to get a little weird, as some of these concepts are more abstract and less grounded than the previous entries. 2011's You're Next features a large family's dinner party that quickly divulges into an all-out war after some, you guessed it, masked madmen begin firing crossbows into the home. It's quickly hinted at and later fully revealed that two of the brothers attending the dinner party arranged the execution of half of their family in exchange for part of the inheritance they would receive. The plan goes to shit when some of the family fights back and the hitmen fail to put an end to the madness. One of the brothers' wives goes on an all-out killing spree, working her way out of the house to next door and then back home, expertly taking out anyone who gets in her way. When she puts the pieces together that her husband and brother-in-law are behind the whole thing, she makes light work of the latter before reuniting with the former for a ceremonious final stabbing. A cop walks up and witnesses this final and most personal act of revenge and shoots her immediately. She falls but stays conscious long enough to witness that same police officer falling victim to one of the many booby traps she set during her crusade, and the credits roll. Obviously not the most grounded entry on this list, but it poses an interesting twist of the inside man that arranged the crime in the first place. 2013's The Purge is mostly focused on a home invasion, however it's posed in such a surreal setting that it didn't feel like it belonged with the rest of the group. 2015 gave us a remake of Death Game named Knock Knock, starring Keanu Reeves and featuring a certain level of humor.
So how could you be a flight attendant if you're only 15?
While it maintained the main plot from the original, it has a bit of playfulness throughout the movie, and in this one, the two troublemakers revealed to their captor that they were of age the entire time, which puts the audience at ease and helps them root for Keanu. I think this takes away from the tension of the original, though, and takes away the moral ambiguity that kept people talking about it long after it came out. We actually see his family come home to be shocked and disappointed as well in this entry, which is a fine version of the ending. Overall, this version is a lot more fun to watch, but a lot less impactful as a result. In 2016, a scarcely talked about movie would drop and challenge the entire notion of home invasions, depicting a blind man fighting back against his invaders with both action and horror movie influences on display. Don't Breathe shows a gang of intruders carelessly breaking into a home after hearing legend of a massive treasure being held by an old, helpless, but unhinged vet. Shit hits the fan when the man realizes there are people hunting for his treasure and he begins surveying the situation, preparing weapons, and confronting the criminals. We quickly realize the burglars are no match for the old man, and he begins dispatching them one by one before the tables turn again when we learn that the old man is holding a young girl captive in the basement. Yes, another one of those movies where the creative team pulls you back and forth between rooting for one side and then the other and trying to figure out who the real villain is along the way. The simple truth is, they're all villains, and while it tries its hardest to get me to care about any of the main characters, it fails in that I know there's only so many ways this thing can end. There are some entertaining sequences, but overall, the protagonist, if you can call her that, gets off too easy as she not only escapes with the money, but also sees no criminal charges as the old man doesn't tell police about the money. I was kinda hoping to see one last standoff between the old man and the main character, but instead she just leaves to start her new life and the old man seemingly goes on about his. I had fun with Don't Breathe, and I think it's at its best, like most of these movies, when it's a gritty deathmatch between the intruders and the homeowner, fueled by nothing but desperation on one side and the will to survive on the other. It has a few moments that are totally surreal, but a few that are uncomfortably grounded as well. In 2018, we got a sequel to The Strangers titled Pray at Night.
What's queef?
That told an extremely similar story to the first movie while switching the atmosphere to a gloomy trailer park and swapping the genre to something more along the lines of a straight-up slasher flick. The acting is corny, the deaths are gruesome, and the Tamara is not home. We got the classic question of why the villains are doing this again.
Why not?
It also tries to do a shocking reveal that the main character is still being hunted at the end when she wakes up in the hospital, but I don't think anyone even stayed to watch that long anyways. In the regular ending, she hears a knock at the door and the credits roll, but they actually released an alternate ending, if you can call it that, which really just adds a few more seconds of content but doesn't expand on the original ending or change it at all. Now, in 2019, we got something really special, a home invasion movie that very nearly avoids the topic of violence altogether. Parasite is a Korean movie spearheaded by Bong Joon-ho that shows a desperate family, impoverished and codependent, invading a wealthy family's home by putting on the facade that they are unrelated service workers who just happen to recommend each other. One by one, they gain the naive wife's trust, all while scheming on how to exploit her and improve their own lives on her husband's dime. There are tense moments throughout where they narrowly avoid being found out, and everything is generally smoothed over before people start asking questions, and the father of the parasitic bunch commits a vicious stabbing and retreats to living out the rest of his days in the shelter underneath the home. Parasite was unpredictable and just generally a great time, and instead of leaning into the gory horror aspect of things, it instead paints home invasions in an emotionally charged light, leaving you wondering who you can trust in this world and staying fairly grounded along the way. In 2021, we got a prequel to Don't Breathe 2, and it was a real stinker in my opinion. It shows a different home invasion that took place years ago against the old man and a little girl. It focuses on the action and gore and skips any of the terror or suspense elements, and I had a hard time even making it through this meaningless dribble if I'm being honest, which was kind of surprising as I rather enjoyed the first one. In 2024, The Strangers pulled a wild card and remade the original movie from the ground up with new actors and an ever so slightly altered story.
Seriously, what's queef?
So, as you can imagine, some couple goes out to their remote cabin and has a night of terror after some masked individuals show up. Most of the beats from the original are here, although in this one they change the part where he kills his best friend, and instead he rounds the side of the house and immediately fires on the owner of the home who was just dropping by to fix the plumbing. So let me get this straight. They took the one heavy scene out of the script and replaced it with more mindless murder with no real consequences or weight? The rest of the film is the same as you remember, but they borrow a little bit of the action energy from Prey at Night. They also altered the ending so that the wife wakes up in the hospital with the feeling that she's still being hunted, much like the daughter in Prey at Night did. I get that they're trying to reboot the franchise. They even subtitled this entry Chapter 1, but this makes no sense to me at all. The acting, pacing, writing, and sense of tension are all easily trumped by the first movie, and it's clear that nobody had a real reason as to why this movie should exist. It just does. It seems a sequel was greenlit right after the first one released, and its release date is just a few months out at the time of filming this, and a teaser trailer recently dropped that shows the wife from Chapter 1 getting out of the hospital and being picked up on a lonely road by some kind strangers. Shortly after being locked in the car, she starts to get the creeps from the dudes in the back seat with her, and then notices a smiley face tattoo that cements in her mind the fact that these are the same people who recently terrorized her. Or at least a related faction. Evidently, they are planning on expanding on the original concept and diving deeper into the depravity of these deranged daredevils. We're sure to receive some kind of lore dump that takes away from the mystique of committing heinous crimes simply because someone was home. Now, the entries on this list that lack a motive altogether are perhaps the most haunting of all, and they're surely the ones that have stuck around in my headspace. I mean, every protagonist asks why the perps are doing this, and being told there's no real reason you're being traumatized would be gut-wrenching. At least when they're after money, you know there might be some way out of this. One other thing is for sure, and that's when home invasion movies sway towards being unbelievable, when you can no longer buy the plot or the characters make wildly irrational decisions, they lose the vast majority of their charm. They're at their best when you find yourself gutted by the reality of senseless violence, truly questioning whether you could do better in these intense situations. They build and break tension repeatedly and sometimes make the audience feel complicit in the crime, merely for spectating the gruesome events without the ability to help at all. One simple concept of your personal property being broken into has given us 100 or more somewhat unique stories, and we've seen the genre shift over the years from film noir to psychological suspense movies, from suspense to tense thrillers, and from thrillers to gory horror, all while touching on notes of voyeurism, murder mystery, action, revenge, and self-defense. We've seen the good guys duck, dodge, dip, dive, and dodge an onslaught of attacks, and we've seen villains overpower them in some scenarios too. It all begs the question of what can you do if you're being terrorized? There's almost never any reasoning with the individuals aiming to put you in harm's way, so if you're weaker or slower than them, you might just have to accept your fate. You can try to run, but some extenuating circumstances will either stop you from leaving or force you to return. You can try to call for help, but you better believe the phone line's cut or the celly's smashed. Even if the cops do come, they just get taken out too or convinced to leave. You can try to fight back, but you'll probably get ganged up on in the end. Maybe, just maybe, you work your way through all of the depraved loonies and deliver one final blow to end the entire nightmare, walking away once and for all. Even then, you're likely stuck with a lifetime of paranoia and PTSD, devoting all of your mental energy and finances towards protecting yourself or your family. Like I said earlier, there's only so many endings to this thing, and none of them are pretty. We've pushed this thing nearly as far as it can go, but there were so many great home invasion flicks that I didn't have a take on or didn't have time to explore. I figured it's only right to do an honorable mentions bonus round. So the first half of Stanley Kubrick's classic, A Clockwork Orange, is focused on several brutal home invasions. However, the plot branches out widely from there, and calling even that first half a grounded experience would be untruthful at best, brother. Death Wish, Law Abiding Citizen, and the Death Wish remake show men using home invasions committed against them as motive to exact their revenge on the world, killing countless people while the police try to figure them out. Side note here, isn't it funny how much Bruce Willis and Dean Norris look alike? If it wasn't for the contrasting costumes, they'd be impossible to tell apart. Hard Candy is kinda like Death Game and Knock Knock, where an underage sleuth torments an unsuspecting creep. But this time around, things are somehow even more serious and higher stakes than before. Inside uses a home invasion to talk about the lengths you'd go to in order to protect your child, grieving a lost one, and what redemption really means. The Collector shows what happens when you pick the wrong home to invade, particularly one that has already been taken over by a serial killer, that's still there by the way, and now hunting you with booby traps around every single corner. A pretty fun watch if you can handle the grotesque torture sequences. Windfall is a melodramatic take on home invasions where the villain never really has a handle on things or the upper hand. It borrows from the Desperate Hours in that it quickly turns into a multiple-day hostage situation with an innocent witness or two getting in the way. If you're not a fan of gore but want to see one of these modern home invasion movies, this might be the one for you. The Rental hones in on themes of voyeurism and paranoia with a splash of gaslighting and rage, culminating in one unique home invasion sequence, but really just another slow-burn slasher movie overall. Barbarian turns innocent Airbnb renters into the home invaders when they perhaps mistakenly stumble into the tunnels beneath the home, discovering an old secret that has been lurking beneath and making them question what the meaning of home even is. Black Christmas, Christie, and the modern Black Christmas depict college campuses being stormed into while almost no one is there, and I think the fact that it's called a sorority house and they live there means that they technically fit the bill of home invasion movies. It's also another strange example of a remake where the core theme is nearly the only thing that remained intact, and even that gets mutilated. The original was a grounded slasher, but the new one was a weird exploration of toxic masculinity and black magic. In A House on the Bayou, some kind of demon takes it upon himself to hunt down what he deems bad men and uses Pet Wolf, who's actually the devil, to kill them by manipulating them to let him into the house that he secretly owns and rents to them because the cops are okay with it. Or something like that. I don't know, this one was fine, but it didn't really grab me and it certainly wasn't realistic. Hush is about a deaf woman playing a terrifying game of cat and mouse with a home invader before overcoming all odds and besting them to get away scot-free, and See For Me is the exact same thing but with a blind woman instead of a deaf one. And finally we have Bodies, 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 which shares all the core principles of the home invasion genre, all while lacking any real threat at all. A bunch of friends convince themselves there is a killer taking them out and let paranoia and their unhealthy codependency get the best of them, leaving a bloody trail of confusion in their path. Home invasions are a rare yet terrifying phenomenon that we clearly cannot move on from in the cinema world. Today I've taken you through over 100 years of media in the genre, and while we had a few samey homage misfires, many of these projects found a way to take an idea in a saturated market and make it their own. We may not have learned anything, but at least we had a good time. Be sure to lock your doors, friends. I think that might actually be all the home invasion movies ever, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. Hello? Seriously, bro, you forgot? I didn't even talk about when a stranger calls. Thank you so much for watching. Tell a friend, and have a good day.